Today we're going to get started on Chapter 5, the Integumentary System. On Slide 2, we have Learning Outcomes 5.1 to 5.5. And on Slide 3, we have Learning Outcomes 5.6 to 5.10. Make sure to go over them. That tells us what we're going to be covering. We're going to get started for time's sake. Now we're going to get started. So the integumentary system is called the cutaneous membrane, or the cutaneous membrane is the skin. It has two layers, specifically the epidermis superficial layer or the dermis deep layer. The second part of the skin are the accessory structure. That includes the hair, nails, and some exocrine glands. And the third deeper layer is the hypodermis or subcutaneous layer, deep to the dermis. This picture illustrates everything we just talked about. Make sure you know this and can label it for the test. Now, there are 5 general functions of the integumentary system: protection, temperature maintenance, synthesis and storage of nutrients. Specifically, the skin makes vitamin D3 and stores lipids in the adipose tissue. Sensory reception for pain, pressure, touch, temperature, and then excretion and secretion, which is sweat in the form of salt, water, and organic waste, and then the mammary glands secrete milk. Now, the epidermis is called stratified squamous epithelium. Thick skin has 5 layers, thin skin has 4 layers. This gives an illustration of the epidermis and the 5 basic layers that you'll see. Now, skin color. An important part of skin is its color, and there's the role of pigmentation. Keratin is an orange-yellow, and it accumulates in the epidermis and comes from orange-colored foods. Melanin is brown, yellow-brown, or black, and it's produced by the melanocytes near the basal, near the stratum basal cells, and they absorb ultraviolet or UV radiation, and it protects deeper layers. Here are 2 pictures that illustrate the melanocytes and the melanin pigment. Now let's talk about the role of dermal circulation in skin color. Oxygenated blood is bright red, resulting in a flushed red skin color when the blood vessels dilate. Short-term paling of the skin occurs with vasoconstriction. And then cyanosis is a bluish coloration, and it occurs when the blood oxygen supplies are diminished. Vitamin D3 is derived from a cholesterol-related steroid in the epidermis when exposed to sunlight or UV radiation. It's modified by the liver and the kidneys into calcitriol, and essential for calcium and phosphorus absorption in the small intestine. Skin cancers. Basal cell carcinoma is the most common form of skin cancer. Squamous cell carcinoma is found in more superficial layers, but malignant melanoma is the most dangerous, and it usually begins with the mole and can metastasize throughout the lymphatic system. Now we're going to begin the dermis. The dermal papillary layer is just deep to and projects up into the epidermis. It contains capillaries, nerves, and that supply the epidermis. It has a meshwork of dense, irregular connective tissue. It also has elastic and collagen fibers, and then collagen fibers that extend up into the dermal papillary and down to the hypodermis. It also contains the hair follicles and sweat glands, the cutaneous plexus, which is the blood vessels from the hypodermis that extend up into the reticular layer of the dermis, and then the blood vessels, lymphatics, and nerves. They supply nutrients, eliminate waste, control secretions, and respond to stimuli. Again, this is the exact picture that you're going to see on the test. Make sure you can label all the layers, the epidermis, dermis, and hypodermis, and then all the accessory structures. The hypodermis is also called the subcutaneous layer. It's an ideal site for subcutaneous injections. Now, let's talk about the accessory organs. Hairs are non-living structures, and they project above the skin surface everywhere except the soles of the feet, the palms of the hands, the sides of the fingers and toes, the lips, and portions of the genitals. Hair originates in the dermis and extends through the epidermis to the outside environment. The hair matrix grows, it makes the hair longer, and the cells become keratinized and die. The hair shaft has 3 layers of dead cells. From outer to inner is the cuticle, the cortex, and the medulla. The hair protects the scalp. It prevents entry of foreign particles into the nose, eyes, and ears. It prevents injury via sensory perception, and it expresses emotional states like hair standing up due to the contraction of the erector pili muscle. Know that for the test. Hair color is due to the amount and type of melanin from the melanocytes. Aging results in less pigment production, melanin, thus causing gray or white hair. This gives you an illustration, and it shows you the hair papilla, the hair matrix, the medulla, the cortex. You can see the hypodermis, the hair, and then the hair shaft. This is the same thing, however, you see the sebaceous gland and the erector pili muscle. Remember the sebaceous glands, and they secrete oily sebum into the hair follicle. Sebaceous glands are sensitive to hormonal changes. Inflamed glands can result in acne. This shows you where the sebaceous gland is and its effect on the hair follicle. Now, as far as sweat glands goes, there are 2 types. There's the apocrine sweat glands and the merocrine sweat glands. The apocrine sweat glands become active at puberty, and they secrete a sticky, cloudy sweat into the hair follicles in the armpits, around the nipples, and the pubic region. Sweat is a great source of food for bacteria on the skin, and that increases body odor. Merocrine sweat glands, also called eccrine sweat glands, are very important. They are very numerous with high numbers on the soles of the feet and the palms of the hands. They also contain the electrolytes, urea, and organic nutrients. The function is to cool the body through evaporation. Again, this is a picture illustrating the merocrine sweat glands versus the apocrine sweat glands. Now, the mammary glands, they secrete milk, and they're modified sweat glands. And then the ceruminous glands secrete the waxy substance that combines with the sebaceous glands or the sebaceous oils to form earwax. Remember the nail. The nail protects the tips of the fingers and toes, and it has certain parts. We're going to go right to the picture to see them. If you look at this picture, we have the free edge, the nail body, the lunula, the cuticle, and then the nail root. And from this cross-sectional angle, we can see the epidermis, the dermis, and then the bone of the fingertip. Skin regeneration is unique to the integumentary system. It occurs because the stem cells of the epithelium and connective tissue undergo cell division. It happens in 4 steps: scab formation, tissue granulation, scab removal, and scar formation. Again, we're going to go right to the image to show what's going on. Now let's go over the 4 steps. First, we have scab formation. That's in the first picture. Second, then we have tissue granulation. And in that, we see the macrophages and the fibroblasts starting to clean up and begin the formation of tissue growth. Then we have scab removal in step 3. and you could see it healing from the bottom up and the scab getting smaller and smaller, moving to the epidermis. And then finally, the last step is scar formation, where there's no more blood and there's a small indentation until complete healing occurs. Burns can be caused by chemicals, heat, radiation, electrical shock. The severity depends on the depth into the tissues and the total area affected. There are three classifications of burns: the first degree burn, second degree burn, and third degree burn. In the first degree burn, the superficial cells of the epidermis are killed and the lower layers of the epidermis are injured, and it's inflamed and tender. The second degree burn is more serious. Both the superficial and deeper cells of the epidermis are killed, and then the injured area is the upper dermis, and it may extend into the reticular layer of the dermis. Blisters are very common. It can be very painful. The third degree burn is the most serious, and all epidermal and dermal layers are killed. It's injured all the way down to the hypodermis. It's usually charred. There's no sensation due to the damage of the sensory nerves, and there's no bleeding because of the damage to the blood vessels. Now, the effects of aging on the integumentary system. Number one, the skin injuries and infections are more common. There's an increased sensitivity of the immune system, and that sensitivity is reduced, again, due to the aging process and the decrease of macrophages. The muscles become weaker and the bone strength decreases, and that's usually due to the decline of vitamin D3. There's also a sensitivity to sun exposure increases, and what that's due to is a lower amount of melanin production. The skin becomes drier and flakier, and that's due to a reduction in glandular secretions. The sebaceous glands will secrete less oil, and then the hair thins and loses color. And again, this is due to the low functioning follicles and the decreased melanocyte activity. Finally, there can be an increased or sagging or wrinkling of the skin occurs. That's due to the decrease in the elastic network. The ability to lose heat is reduced, and that's due to reduced dermal blood supply. And then skin repairs more slowly due to slower stem cell division, and there's an increasing threat of infection and cuts. And that completes the integumentary system.